Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The sun was lowering behind the ridge when Jonah rode into the yard. The last light of the day, settling across the dry valley in a pale, steady glow. His horse moved slowly, its breath showing in the cooling air, and Jonah felt a familiar ache in his shoulders from carrying traps. All afternoon, he expected the usual quiet, the kind of stillness that always greeted him after days spent alone. But something in the ground near the cabin door stopped him before he even reached the hitch rail. There were tracks, light, uneven, desperate. Jonah stayed in the saddle for a moment longer, forcing his heartbeat to settle. The prints were not made by a man. They were too narrow, too scattered, like someone stumbling and catching themselves. A smaller set followed close, tiny steps that pressed shallow into the dirt. He saw where knees had sunk into the ground, one deeper than the other, as if someone had lowered themselves slowly and stayed there for some time. Jonah swung off the horse, boots landing quiet. He held the residential loosely as he crouched, running 2 fingers along the edge of footprint. The shape told him enough. A patchy woman, small child, exhausted, likely starving. He felt a pull deep in his chest. Not fear, but concern heavy enough to make him breathe slower. The cabin door stood slightly open, just enough to catch his eye. That door never stayed open unless he left it that way. And Jonah always checked it twice before leaving. His hand found the butt of his holstered revolver automatically, though he didn't draw it. Not yet. He took one slow step toward the door. Another inside. The room was dim, the last bit of daylight slipping across the floorboards. The fire in the stove had died down to faint orange coals. At first, Jonah saw nothing. Then his eyes adjusted. A woman stood in the corner near the wall, her back partly turned, a child held tightly against her chest. Her clothes were torn, her shoulders shaking with exhaustion. She turned at the sound of his step, and Jonah caught the look in her eyes. Fear that had been building for days, maybe weeks, held back only by the small weight of the child she protected. He froze, not out of fear, but so she wouldn't. The woman swallowed hard, her throat trembling. Her voice came out thin, rough from dryness. "Please, my daughter, she needs food." Her gaze didn't move from him. Her arms tightened around the girl whose head rested limp against her shoulder. The child looked no older than 4. Jonah saw how shallow her breaths were, how close to faint she seemed. Maya, he didn't know her name yet, shifted her feet slightly, adjusting the girl's weight despite how unsteady her own legs were. "I can offer myself," she continued, barely audible. "If you feed her," Jonah felt something heavy settle inside him. A sharp awareness of how desperate she had become. He didn't step forward. He didn't reach out. He only lifted his left hand slightly, palm out to show he meant no harm. "No," he said, voice steady low, controlled. "Not that your girl eats. Both of you eat. That's all." He saw the confusion flicker across her face first, then disbelief. Fear didn't leave her, but shifted, loosening just enough for her to take a breath that didn't shake as hard. Jonah walked toward the table slowly, keeping his distance as he placed what food he had from earlier, bread, a tin bowl of stew, half a boiled potato onto the surface. The smell filled the room. The child stirred weakly, sensing warmth or food, or both. "You can sit," Jonah said quietly. "Let her eat." Mia didn't move at first. Her mind was racing. He could see in the tension in her hands the way she angled her body to keep the child shielded. She was deciding whether he was dangerous, whether she had made a mistake coming here. Jonah stepped back near the door, giving her space, letting her see every movement he made. Finally, she edged forward, lowering herself into the chair. Her knees nearly buckled as she did when she placed the girl on her lap. Her hands trembled so much she had to steady the child twice before lifting a tiny spoonful of stew. Ona opened her mouth slowly. A small sound left her throat. A faint whine, not quite a cry, not quite relief. Watching them, Jonah felt something inside him shift. He remembered the weight of silence after his wife's passing. The quiet that had seeped into this cabin for years. He remembered the sound of a child breathing, the sound of someone depending on him. He exhaled slowly and leaned against the door frame, arms crossed loosely so he didn't look threatening. His mind ran through questions. Where had she come from? Who hurt her? Were they nearby? But he pushed them aside for now. The first priority was simple. Let them breathe. Let them eat. Let them be safe for at least one night. Maya fed the girl in tiny bites, watching Jonah with cautious eyes the whole time. Every movement she made was careful, as if ready to run if he so much as stiffened. Jonah stayed still. He didn't rush her. He didn't speak again until the bowl was nearly empty. You'll take the bed tonight, he said, keeping his voice even. Her eyes widened slightly, unsure how to react. I'll sleep by the stove, he added. It's warmer there anyway. Something flickered in her expression, a mix of confusion, fear, and a small, buried relief that she wasn't ready to trust yet. But she didn't refuse. She didn't argue. She only pulled her daughter closer and not at once. Jonah turned toward the stove, adding 2 logs and adjusting the vent, so the room slowly warmed. As he worked, he found himself listening to the sound of Maya's breathing, steadying with each passing moment. He hadn't expected to come home to anyone. He hadn't expected to feel anything stir inside him again. But tonight, someone else breathed under his roof. And Jonah knew as he sat near the stove and watched the fire catch, that nothing in this cabin would feel the same from now on. The fire in the stove burned low but steady, the orange glow spreading slowly across the floorboards as Jonah eased himself down near it. He didn't lie back yet. He kept his eyes open, listening to the soft, uneven breaths coming from the bed. Ma sat on the edge with her daughter cradled against her chest, her posture stiff, as if any shift might wake danger instead of comfort. Jonah kept his hands loosely resting on his knees, showing no sign of hurry, no sudden movements. He understood enough to know she was deciding whether he was safe. He had seen that look before on people who had run too far, too long. You can sleep, he said, voice low, steady, doors locked. No one will come in. Maya didn't answer at first. Her head tilted slightly, studying him in a dim firelight. Her eyes reflected exhaustion so deep it looked like she hadn't slept properly in weeks. Her shoulders were drawn tight beneath her torn dress, and she held on with both arms, as if even the softness of a blanket might not be enough protection. Finally, she spoke, quiet, strained. Why are you helping us? Jonah's jaw tightened, and he took a slow breath before answering. Your girl needs rest, food, warmth. That's reason enough. Maya lowered her gaze as if unsure how to process an answer without hidden conditions. She rocked her daughter gently, and the movement was so careful that Jonah felt a tightening in his chest. He could see how fragile her strength was, barely holding, but still holding all the same. He looked away to give her space. I'm not going to take anything from you, Jonah said after a moment. I meant what I said. Maya's fingers stroked her daughter's hair. Men don't help for nothing, she whispered, the words flat, shaped by experience more than belief. Jonah didn't respond right away. He understood the weight behind her words, the history that shaped them. He shifted his position on the floor, stretching one leg out as if settling for the night, showing her he had no interest in moving closer. You won't hear that from me, he said finally. The wind pushed lightly against the cabin walls, the boards creaking in familiar ways. Jonah watched the fire brighten as fresh logs caught, and the warmth gently filled the small room, softening the sharpness of the cold. After a long silence, Maya finally moved to lie down on the bed. She didn't fully stretch out. She kept her knees drawn slightly inward, her daughter nestled against her stomach. Jonah noticed she slept on the far side of the bed, facing the wall, positioning herself so she could shield the child with her body. Her breathing shifted, still tense but slowing. Jonah lowered himself onto the old blanket near the stove, the floorboards cold beneath his shoulder, even through the fabric. He'd slept worse places. He lay still, staring at the ceiling beams, listening to the small sounds inside the cabin, the gentle hum of the fire, the soft whimper of a child shifting in sleep, the faint rustle of Maya adjusting the blanket to cover both of them. He felt something unfamiliar stir, an awareness that the cabin no longer felt as empty as usual.